meeting is being recorded.
All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order at 5 p.m. So before we get into our agenda for tonight, I'd just like to quickly introduce our newest staff member, our economic development team. So we've been really lucky that Laura Love is joining us this week. So she's been invited to the meeting tonight and you'll see her here. So I've just asked her to come and give a quick introduction before we get into our agenda this evening, because you'll all be working with her over the next little while.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Emily, so much for inviting me to join this evening. As introduced, my name is Laura Love. My background is in museum collections care and museum administration. And I look forward to seeing all of your lovely faces and working with you all in the not so distant future.
Great, thanks, Laura. So Laura has taken the new position that was created by council last year, the Economic Development Officer Curatorial Services. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, it's a long title. So so you'll all be working with her on various things over the next little while. So feel free to reach out to get to know her, and I'm sure you'll all see each other again. All right, so now that we've had our introductions, we will get into the formal agenda. Okay, so you have the agenda before you for this evening, and hopefully you've all reviewed it. Could I get somebody to move the adoption of the agenda for this evening? Okay, Anne, and can I get a seconder, please? Councillor Ashmore. All right, any questions regarding the adoption of the agenda this evening? Nope. And vote on that, please. All in favor? Great, passed, excellent. Okay, so we'll move on to our next agenda item for this evening. So this is the election of the chair for 2022. So I would like to call nominations for the position of chair for the year 2022. Anne? You're on mute.
Sorry, I lost my mouse there for a minute. I had to flip over to this. I had sent you an email. I think Athol has done an amazing job this last year, and I would put his name forward again.
Great, thanks, Anne. Are there any other nominations for the position of chair? Okay, and calling a second time, any nominations for the position of chair? Okay, so Anne has nominated Athol for the position, and there are no other folks nominated or putting their names forward. So Athol, you are chair by acclamation. I'll just do the vice chair election and then I'll hand it over to you if that sounds good. Okay, great. All right, let's move on to the vice chair. This is quite straightforward. Okay. So now for the election of the vice chair for 2022, do I have any nominations for the position of vice chair? Councillor Ashmore?
Thanks. I'll nominate Jim Garbutt.
Great, thank you. Are there any other nominations for the position of vice chair? Okay, and one more call. Any nominations for the position of vice chair? And no, all right. So Jim Garbutt is elected to the position of vice chair by acclamation. All right, thanks very much. So those are our elections for 2022. That was quick and easy. Thanks, everybody. So I will now hand the agenda over to Athol.
Thank you very much, and thank you all very much for the vote of confidence. I appreciate it. So we'll ask, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest on the items on the agenda this evening? There being none, we'll move forward. So we have the adoption of the minutes for the meeting held on Thursday, December 2nd, 2021. Is there any discussion regarding these minutes? All right, may I have someone move the minutes, please? Moved by Julia, seconded by Skip. All those in favor? Thank you, approved. So we have some presentations and deputations this evening. And the first one, I guess, that we have is from Jorg, and he's the manager of building and property, speaking to us about the old jail wall demolition. Welcome, Jorg.
Thank you, Athol. And Happy New Year to everyone on the call. It's going to be an interesting year. Looking forward to it. I don't have a presentation per se, but I did want to provide everyone with a bit of an update on what's happening with the old jail walls. So I'll give you a quick summary of where things are right now, and then pleased to answer any questions about anything. As I have said in previous times when I've been at the committee, if there's anything in addition, over and above what we're talking about here on the agenda that members of the committee wish to talk about, either now or in the future, please let me know. With regard to the wall demolition, we have just this past week actually awarded a contract for the wall demolition. So a company has been hired to do that work. We have not yet met with the company on site for a startup. First conversation with that company will be on Monday. So I'll be meeting with them. It's actually, the company's name is BE Construction, capital B, capital E Construction. And meeting with them on Monday. It'll be a Zoom call just to get things started off. And I hope to have a schedule that I can share at some point in the coming week after that. The archaeological work is not altogether complete, but the major part of it has been completed, and report has been submitted to the Ministry of Heritage. We've received correspondence from Ministry of Heritage advising that they have received the report, it's been reviewed, and now posted to the provincial registry. The report did identify some additional work yet remaining to be done, and that work will be done in conjunction with as the project is carried out. Over and above what we are required to do to meet the more strict requirements from the ministry, we are still looking at doing a fulsome examination of all the yards. My hope is that we can get a ground penetrating radar examination done. That will not happen until sometime in warmer weather. And it also depends on the availability of resources to do that work. As you might appreciate, these days it's very hard to find someone who's experienced and capable and equipment to do ground penetrating radar surveys. They're occupied with First Nations needs for the most part right now, but we are still looking after that or looking into that and hoping to have something done as soon as possible. That's basically it in terms of big picture. I did provide, Emily, a copy of a thinking piece, I call it, with regard to future development of that site. I know that there's a great deal of interest in how that might be done. The piece that, or the illustration that I provided is really, as I said, a thinking piece. It's intended to provide something people can look at, think about, comment on. The idea is to facilitate input to a process of future decision-making. We do not have budget at this point in time to move ahead with those improvements, for the most part not. There'll be some minor things that we'll be able to do, I think, in the time after the demolition project has been done. But would like very much to have comments and inputs back. So I'll leave it at that. And if there's any questions or comments, any discussion, I would ask if you could please have at it.
All right, I would like to ask a question, please, Jorg.
Sure.
I have asked for a copy of the phase 1, 2, and now, since it's been half done, 3 archaeological surveys, but no one has provided them to the committee through me. May I please have those?
I can provide those to you tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Are there any other questions of Jorg regarding this issue? Councillor Ashmore.
Through you to Jorg. So Jorg, what is the plan now for a perimeter? Like what is the plan for to protect the property, to protect the building, the old jail building? Now that there's no physical, there's potentially won't be a physical wall there. What is the plan?
I'm going to be careful about the use of the word plan. As I was saying, the illustration that I provided gives some indication of what's possible. Again, it's a thinking piece. In terms of more immediately the needs to protect or provide some security around the back of the building, not just for the building, but also for the other infrastructure that's there, we will be putting up temporary fencing.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of Jörg? Okay, Jörg, thank you very much for your presentation, and we'll obviously be discussing it over
I'm
a
sure.
period of time from a variety of aspects. And I'm sure that we will officially feed back to you the information resulting from that discussion. And thank you very much for providing those to me tomorrow.
Thank you, Ethel. And if you don't mind, I'll provide that through Emily.
That's
I'll send the
fine.
material to Emily and she can pass it along.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone.
Have a good evening.
You too. Bye now.
Bye. So we now move on to item 3.1, which is the update we just had. You were provided today by Emily with the printable version of the proposal or the thinking piece. So I think we should put your thoughts together and report back to the committee at the next meeting. Can we put that on the agenda as tabled till the next meeting, please, Emily?
Sure, that sounds good. If you'd like, it might make sense for the committee to pass a motion to accept the update from Jörg and to report back to the committee at the next meeting. It'd be good to just have a motion for that we can
All
put
right.
on.
May I have such a motion, please? It's moved by Skip, seconded by Ann Adair. Thank you. All those in
Oh.
favor? Sorry, go ahead, Ann.
No, go ahead and finish this. I just have a question, so sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay. All those in favor? Thank you. It's approved. Your question, Ann?
When we were there and we did the site visit, there was a lot of reference to what had already kind of been negotiated or what they said had been negotiated with the city through their lease. Is that something that the Heritage Committee could actually look at, is what was negotiated in their lease, so that we can kind of look at that with that in the back of our minds?
I think we did provide the lease, if I thought it was to everyone, but maybe I didn't get it out to everyone. So I will make sure that I resend it to everyone on the committee.
Thank you, Ethel.
Yeah, the lease, just so everybody is aware, it's a public document, so it is available and it can certainly be circulated. That's not a problem at all. And just so everybody is aware, the lease, what was negotiated in the lease, it was discussions between our community services department, the city in general, and also the Old Jail Museum. But any work that happens on the property does require a heritage permit. So any work that comes forward, whether or not that's the work that's proposed in the thinking piece that Jörg has presented to us, future expansion of the museum or any other similar type work, it will come back to the committee for approval when the time is right for that to come forward, because it is a designated property. So there is the heritage permitting process. So just everyone should be aware of that when they're looking at the lease, looking at the plan that Jörg has presented, and when we're looking at this discussion as well. So just be aware of that.
And further on this evening, you were sent a communication piece that came from the Victoria County Historical Society, which we will be discussing later under communications. Yes, Skip.
Just a question, because I wasn't on the committee at the time you did the tour through there. Is there a possibility to be able to go through it?
I hand that to Emily.
I think at the moment, because of the COVID restrictions, the answer is probably no. So we are limiting in-person access to city properties at the moment for obvious reasons with regard to public health measures. It's certainly something that I could discuss with our building and property staff. And I suspect that it will become a construction zone quite soon. So I can touch base with Jorg about that. But I think because of the COVID restrictions, probably not, unfortunately. Just bad timing, I think.
All right, any further questions? All right, shall we move on then to our 2021 review and our 2022 work plan? And I'm
Ethel, do you want
going
me to give oh, sorry,
Yes.
go ahead. I would say, do you want me to give a brief rundown for everybody on the committee so they know what we're doing?
That's what I was just saying.
Great.
I'm going to
Okay, we're
refer
on
the
the same.
first part to you.
We're on the same page. Great. Okay. So, so each year, for people who are new on the committee, and for people who've forgotten what happened last January, each year we do a work plan for the upcoming year. So we do a quick review of what we accomplished in the previous year and look towards what we're going to do until December. So because this is a statutory committee, a lot of the stuff we do is the same year over year. So our work plan remains pretty much, a lot of it is the same every year. But we do have some additional items if there's special projects that we're working on that have been added to the work plan. So what I've done for you this evening is I just put together a brief overview of what we accomplished in 2021, which was a lot. So good job, everybody. Lots happened on the heritage front in 2021, which is great considering we're still in the pandemic. We got a lot of stuff happening, and also a draft work plan for 2022. So usually how we do this is we have a look through the work plan, some stuff like, designating properties, reviewing alteration applications, they stay on all the time. But if there's additional special projects, things that the committee would like to accomplish in this year, this is the time to discuss and add on to that. These work plans go to council in March for approval. So council sees all the committees, committee and board work plans in March. So we'll just have a look at the work plan this evening, and if there's anything you want to add, now is the time. So if you just want to, on page 19 of your agenda, that's our 2022 draft work plan that I've pulled together. So we have kind of the standard things on here that are there year after year. So applications for designations, recommending properties for listing to council, reviewing heritage permit applications, reviewing policy. So those are our sort of big statutory items that we do, as well as commenting on relevant planning and development applications. So those are our statutory things that we do. And then our other type special projects. So coordinating doors open. That's one we usually do every year, but it's also still a special project. Planning and coordinating the 2022 Osprey Heritage Awards. So for those of you who weren't on the committee before, we've deferred those for a couple of years just because of the pandemic. We haven't been able to do it for obvious reasons. Participating in the Old Mill Conservation District development. So we've been working on that for a couple of years now as well. Undertaking the designation of the Schuog River as a cultural heritage landscape. That's a holdover from last year, and that's an ongoing one. Participating in the heritage inventory, which we'll talk about in the next report, and then also undertaking condition assessments of individually designated properties. And this is something that we formed a subcommittee on late last year to do pretty much as of this year's project. So that's what I have on the draft work plan for this year. So if there's anything else you'd like to add, discuss away.
I would like to bring forward something we talked about last year that's not on the work plan for this year, and that is devising some way to communicate the property standards for city-owned designated buildings. We have some city-owned designated buildings that are in very poor repair, and I don't think they should be left on into the future. We should deal with it. Personal opinion. I guess my opinion is based on the fact that if the city owns designated buildings, it should function as a model rather than as not up to standard. Anyone wish to discuss that one? Or is it Athol's hot potato? Yes, Skip. Jim.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Actually, I strongly support that, Athol. And I'm glad that you've brought that up. I do think that would be certainly significant to put on there. I also have a suggestion as well, which when we're finished with, discussing what you've just recommended, then I'd like to bring up a point as well. Thank you.
Yes, Skip.
I must be confused because I understood that was point 11 on the plan.
I think what we can do is number 11 is pretty broad. We can add to that under the measurement stages, something about specifically dealing with city-owned properties. If that's something that the committee wants to address really specifically, we can add that into number 11 just as part of that goal, if that works for everybody.
Skip.
Then I support that for sure.
Any further discussion? So could I have someone move that addition to the work plan in item 11? Skip says he'll move it. Do I have a seconder? And seconds? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, is that sufficient for you, Emily, to add that?
Yep, that's good. I think there was something else that Jim wanted to add,
Jim,
and then
yeah.
once there's any more additions, we can just accept the work plan as a whole and recommend that it goes to council. That's what I need from everybody.
Okay, Jim, you're on mute, Jim.
Is that
There you
better?
are. There you are.
All right, there I am again. It's actually something I can't recall whether it came up during committee or where in a dialogue that you and I had when I was lamenting the loss of all the bricks from the storm sewer in the downtown reconstruction that were in absolute mint condition. There were thousands and thousands of bricks. And you mentioned that I believe it was in Newmarket that they had created a repository for salvaged artifacts, salvaged business or building materials from heritage buildings that could be repurposed in other buildings that needed repair. And I'd like to see if we could explore the possibilities of that moving forward. I know that might take some time and might be more involved, but with a nod to your experience, I think that would be a worthy undertaking. I do believe there's going to be other opportunities to salvage and harvest these kinds of materials. And if they could be redirected, it could save property owners a lot of money. And keep them out of the landfills as well. So there's an environmental aspect as well as the heritage. So that would be my suggestion.
Thank you. And if you don't mind me saying, we asked the town to provide us in Newmarket with a repository for reclaimed items, and they gave us a storage area that was at that time unused for us to stockpile those valuable assets for the future. Any other discussion? For instance, if there's specific brick in this area that was in most of the old buildings, et cetera, this allows somebody where they've closed up a window that they have some bricks that are of the appropriate kind to use in that closure, et cetera. Jim? Jim?
Okay, yes, sorry. Can you hear me again? Yep, okay. Yeah, the brick is very important. I know in particular for downtown Lindsay, there are a good number of buildings that need replacement of some bricks. Some of them need more than others. And if we can harvest bricks from homes that are going down that were built in the area, likely the bricks were actually harvested from the same clay deposits. So they would be a good match. And that in particular would be a tremendous help going forward. You know, it would be wonderful. I know the temptation now is to try and side things in the downtown, and hopefully we can convince people or encourage them not to continue on with that kind of practice. But I know some people might prefer stucco or some sort of masonry siding. But if we can go back to the original brick and supply, you know, at affordable cost or for free, I think the property owners could be encouraged to actually continue on that, and it could beautify the downtown and other buildings across the city as well. So for that matter.
So is there any way, Emily, we can put in there to pursue the idea of?
Yeah, we definitely can. We'll put it in as like investigate the potential for et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, we can add that as an extra item for sure.
Okay. All those in, do I have a mover for that idea? Ian, do I have a seconder? Councillor Ashmore, all those in favor?
Thank you.
Carried. All right, thank you. So I think all in all, unless there is any other comment, that is our additions to the work plan that Emily has provided us. So Emily would like us to do an omnibus motion here to approve the work plan as discussed. Do I have anyone who's willing to move that? Ian, thank you. And a seconder, please. Anne, all those in favor? Approved. Does that fulfill your needs there, Emily? Right on. Okay, let's move on to the next item on our agenda, which is 4.2, and it is the heritage inventory guidelines here. And there's been a lot of work put into this by the look of things, Emily, and it looks like it's pretty far advanced. So would you like to introduce it to us?
For sure, thanks, Ethel. So this is the nice copy of the Heritage Inventory Framework. So we had a look at this back in November. We looked at the draft version of it. The committee provided some comments on it, which I've integrated into the final version. So this is it. So just as a quick reminder for everybody, we had discussed the idea of doing a fulsome heritage inventory of the municipality. This is obviously a multi-year project. So I have pulled together this strategic framework that guides it at a much higher level. So this is something that we'd like to take forward to council so that council can endorse this framework and we'll go forward with it. So it basically guides how we do the inventory. There's obviously a lot more things going on at the practical level, but this gives the roadmap for it. So a work plan for this has also been is starting to be developed as well on the side. So I've spoken to Anne about this, and I would like to start the inventory process in spring 2022, and we're going to start it in Bobcaygeon. And the reason for that is Bobcaygeon is big enough that there's lots of data. It's small enough that we can do it in a reasonable amount of time, as in it's smaller than Lindsay, and there's also interested volunteers in community groups who would like to participate in it. So the goal is for this inventory framework to go to council in February, where hopefully it will be adopted. And then in spring, maybe early summer, depending on how the pandemic goes over the next couple of months, we will start doing the actual inventory work in Bobcaygeon in, say, May, June, that kind of time frame. So I'm bringing this back to the committee right now for just for that endorsement to go forward to council, so that we can get going on this project in the spring. And I think it's going to be really good. And we're going to be doing it for like 10 years. So everybody get ready to do some inventorying. Athol, you're on mute.
Sorry, did it myself now. Do I have any questions relating to this work plan, the Heritage Inventory Framework? Councillor Ashmore.
Thank you to Emily. This is quite a mammoth job. Like, do we have enough support staff to do this, or do you need volunteers, or how will we be able to do this? It's a big job, like, for the city. It's important, but do we have enough people? Do we have enough staff and volunteers and people in the public that could help us? I'm sure there'd be lots of volunteers, but are we able to do this, like, strategically or practically?
So the answer is I hope so. So staff-wise, the lead on the project will be me, and also with support from this committee as well. So most of the work will be undertaken by probably community volunteers. And I think once we do our tester in the spring, we'll see how it works, how long it takes. And if we do need additional support, we'll find it out when we do our test run this spring and summer. I'm also probably going to look and see if we can get some students to help us out as well. Last summer in 2021, I had pulled together, we're doing an ArcGIS collector, so I had pulled together that kind of database framework, and we got our summer students that we have in ECDev to test it out. So I'm hoping that we can pull out our summer student resources again to use them. So I think that we will have the resources to do it. It may take a while. That's sort of the caveat with it. And that's one of the reasons why in the framework I've identified priority areas, because we're not going to do this all in a couple of years. It's going to take some time, and you're right, because of the resources that are involved to get it done.
So Emily, in the previous, I believe it was November, we discussed this, and you had stated that you may be able to equip the members of that subcommittee with laptop or notebook computers to go ahead with this project. Is that still on board?
Yep. So I'm working with our IT folks with that. So we're going to be getting some iPads or Android tablets, one or the other, to do this work. So we'll be providing the technology from the city. So that'll be there. We don't have it yet, but we will be getting it.
So I think that may help answer Ron's question, because at that point we were discussing that there were volunteers from the committee itself, and they could work with community volunteers and actually enter data as we go along, house to house or asset to asset. Anne, you had a question?
No, I was just going to say that after I spoke to Emily, I went out to a few people in the community, and everybody I spoke to about it was really excited to help volunteer with it. Bob Cajun does have a vintage Bob Cajun community group. So I think when it comes right down to it, we could even put something out on there looking for volunteers, but I'm really hopeful that we won't have trouble getting volunteers in Bob Cajun, just from the initial feedback that I was getting.
When we were discussing this last fall, I talked to a few people in Fenelon Falls as well, and they've just completed a book on the heritage properties of Fenelon Falls and the history, and most of those people were willing to help do this kind of inventory as well. So I think we may hit something that community groups will actually get involved with and support. It's my hope anyway.
One thing that I'm planning on doing is, once we get the endorsement for this project from council and a clear idea of the work plan and the time frame for it, the goal is to hold some public meetings, do some public outreach within our various communities to get people interested and excited about this project, so that they'll be keen to participate, whether that's actually doing data collection, providing information, any way that they can do it, or just engaging in the project in general. So there will be a fair amount of public outreach for this, because if people who are in the community want to do it, that's fantastic. That's what we want to see, to get people engaged with it.
Anne?
I was just gonna say, maybe when we do the public outreach, it will be a good spot too, to help alleviate fears from some of the people in the community that are afraid of heritage designation and heritage listing. So that would be a good spot to maybe put information out for that as well.
Good point. Anyone else? All right. Do you require a motion to approve the heritage inventory framework as proposed? May I have someone move that, please? Anne, seconded by Julia. All those in favor? Thank you. Carried. Then we come on to something that might have helped having the community outreach, which is the removal of listed property from the Heritage Register, which is 1824 County Road 46, Eldon Township. I was surprised to read in your report, Emily, that they refused your letter to their insurer. That seems strange. Would you like to let us know how that went?
Sure, I'll give everybody the background on this. So for those of you who've been on the committee for a while and kind of know how the listing process works, it's a little bit different now with the changes that came into effect with the Heritage Act in July of 2021. So there's now a formal objection process with listings. So previously we sent out a letter to owners before their property was listed to say, you know, this is what's happening, reach out, et cetera, et cetera. We still send that out so people know that there's a proposed listing before it goes to council. But now once council has made a decision, we send out a second letter, and this is a statutory notice that's required by the Act, letting them know that they can object to the listing of their property. So we sent that out to all of the property owners whose properties were listed in October 2021, and we received one objection for this particular property. So I spoke to the owner on the phone, and we also corresponded by email to discuss this particular issue. So her concern was regarding the insurance for her property, and she did have issues with her insurance company, who had indicated that they do not insure heritage properties. So this is something for those of you, and most people probably don't know this because this is something that I deal with. I get these requests from time to time where people do have issues with their insurance companies when their property becomes designated or listed because their company, they just really don't understand what that means in terms of the risk assessment for their property or how that will affect the insurance that they require. So I have an insurance package that I send out to folks for this, and it's usually sufficient to deal with this problem. It's actually fairly common. So I spoke to the owner of this property regarding that. I offered to provide the package. It's not something that she wanted, and she wanted to pursue having the property removed from the Heritage Register. So she has provided a written request, as she is required to do by the Act, which is attached to this report. So just in terms of process, so everybody knows, since this is a new thing we've never done before, the process for this is that the Heritage Committee reviews it and provides a recommendation to council regarding whether or not the property should be removed, and then council makes the final decision regarding the removal of the property from the Heritage Register. So so really what we need tonight is for the committee to make a recommendation either for the property to remain listed on the Heritage Register or for the property to be removed. And that's the committee's prerogative regarding the recommendation they'd like to make.
While I think that we probably have several examples of this type of building throughout the city of Kawartha Lakes, the thing that bothers me the most about this is to set precedent saying that insurance is the problem, sets a precedent that I don't really like being there. It concerns me because it's provable that in all but one area in the province of Ontario, the value of buildings has either stayed the same or gone higher because of designation. And certainly I had this problem with my insurer in my older home in Newmarket. And in fact, it sold for quite a bit more than we expected it to sell. And that seems to be the fact, at least in the London, Western Ontario University study, that seems to be the fact across the province. So I just don't like establishing a precedent that complain that your insurance company is going to drop you and we undesignate the house. That's the thing that bothers me. Any discussion? I have Bill, and then I have Ian, and then I have Ann. You're on mute, Bill.
There I go.
There you
There
are.
I go. I just have a difficulty with the concept that this committee is dictating to a property owner how that property owner treats their own property. Historically, I think this committee has never designated a property except in the circumstance that the property owner has asked for that designation. And I just think it runs counter to the general principles that we can, out of the blue, put a property on a list, and then when the owner of that property has an issue with that, not take that issue into account. I think it's basically not fair to the property owner.
All right. Then I have Ian and then Ann.
So just to Bill's point, I think what we're talking here is not about a formal designation of this particular property, but about its inclusion in the Heritage Register. So the question that I have, and I've written to Athol and Emily separately about this, is insurance was one half of this property owner's concerns. The other half was she felt that the loss of certain features about the property, the building, meant that it was somehow lacking or no longer representative of how Emily had described it in the listing in the register. So the question I have is, where does the line get drawn? You can have a building that may have lost certain heritage features. For example, the windows might have gone from wood to vinyl, the shingles might have gone from cedar to asphalt or perhaps to a metal roof. It might have lost certain elements of the original design. But heritage includes so much more than just architectural features and structural features. So I guess what I worry about is this also maybe, I don't know if it sets a precedent, but it's something that kind of keeps me awake at night. If a property with heritage significance beyond its own structural and architectural appearance can be removed from a list, from listing, not designation per se, but listing, simply because it has lost certain features, to me that seems incredibly shallow. And the illustration I used with Emily on this is, it's not a residential building, but the Academy Theatre. The inside of the Academy looks nothing like it did in 1893 when it opened. The windows on the west facade are vinyl, I think, they're not original. And the ground level entranceway is completely different from what its original design was. So that's just a concern or question I had, is where does the line get drawn for what constitutes heritage in the eyes of a property owner and what doesn't?
Well, I'd like to just try and answer part of that. Is this house was listed as for two reasons, and one of them was that it has associations with a local figure named James Mccrae. So houses can be listed because of who lived in them. They're important to the community because they may have had a world-renowned or locally renowned architect. There are lots of reasons why houses can be listed. So this house has a couple of reasons, not just its Edwardian classical style, but also who lived there. I don't know if that helps, Ian.
Ethel, if you wouldn't mind me jumping in, just so everybody understands the legislative framework in terms of listing properties. So in order to list a property on the Heritage Register, the Act states that council must believe that it has cultural heritage value, period. That's all the Act says. So there's actually no evaluation criteria for listing properties. You just have to think it has some kind of cultural heritage value of any kind, whether that's architectural, historical, contextual, whatever you want. It's pretty open-ended in terms of what the Act says from a legal perspective. In Kawartha Lakes, how we do it, when I'm writing up the blurbs, I try and make sure that it hits one of the points on Ontario Regulation 906. So, I mean, that's just used for designating individual properties. But if we can hit one of those points when we're listing a property, we know that it has provable cultural heritage value. So for this particular property, it has significance on the architectural side. And I think from an integrity standpoint, there are some arguments around that. But from a historical side, so if you look at the criteria on Ontario Regulation 906, those historical criteria, it certainly hits some of those because of who lived in the house. So that's what we're looking at in terms of the legislation.
Okay, thank you, Emily. And Anne, you were next.
My first question is, do we know who the insurance company is? Because for me, this property aside, I would agree with Athol. That's a slippery slope when we're looking at insurance, and that maybe we need to be dealing with the insurance companies to make sure that they understand that it's not just some underwriter that doesn't truly understand what we're talking about and the difference between listed and heritage. And do we know who the insurance company is on this one, Emily?
No, I don't know who it was. The property owner didn't disclose who their insurance company was, but you're right. I mean, there's lots of misunderstanding in the insurance world about how heritage works in Ontario, and that's something that I deal with actually quite frequently. And I mean, it's probably worthwhile dealing with that a little bit more. I know it's something a lot of municipalities have issues with because the insurance industry does not understand how heritage works in Ontario for the most part. Some people definitely know what they're doing. But there's lots of misconceptions about it for sure.
Well, the other thing too is, I mean, I worked in insurance for 20 years, so I know that if an underwriter has something in their head and it's misconstrued, they can scare the living daylights out of a property owner. So that to me is what's kind of coming through on this. Is this listed or designated? Because all through her letter, she's saying designated, but then we're calling it a listed property.
It's a listed property.
Okay, so I think with the homeowner, they've conveyed to their insurance company that their property is going to be designated. And that has to do with all the changes and everything. Listing a property shouldn't make any difference to the insurance at all, because all that really means is they can't get their demolition permit within the normal 30 days. So that's a very big difference when an insurance company is looking at it.
And this is a conversation I had with the property owner, so we've been through it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think,
Sorry.
I agree with what Bill is saying, that we can't, we have to be careful when if the insurance company was going to cancel their policy, if it was heritage designated, that I would tend to lean more towards, then maybe we need to help this insured a little bit. But I think with this, in that it's just listed, I think there's a misunderstanding, and I think we're not hurting the owner of the home were protecting the home, is my kind of feeling. Anyways.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne. I agree with you. Julia and then Skip.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that while I agree with you, Ethel, about the insurance being, you can't just say that that's okay. I agree with Bill Bateman as well, saying that the person also has a right. But what I would like to then ask is, do we have a precedent of a property that was unlisted for a legitimate reason? Like, what would be then a legitimate reasons to not accept the listing? Could that be in writing, or is it just we're to assess each one as it comes up? And further to that, this house seems to be somewhat deteriorating, and they're not looking at the heritage aspect of it. So can you just then slowly deteriorate your property and then say, no, I don't want to be listed? So it's a little bit frustrating. For I think we all are on the same page that there's two sides to this, but what I'm just saying is, could we perhaps make it more concrete? What would be a legitimate reason to appeal the listing? Do you have a precedent for that?
So just so everybody's aware, this is the first time we've ever received a request to remove a property from the Heritage Register, ever. So this is this is the precedent. And under the Act, there are no specific reasons listed as to why one might remove a property from the Heritage Register. In terms of, from a practical perspective, there's some obvious ones that the committee might consider, like the house burns down. That would be a fairly straightforward one. If there was a legitimate reason that the property did not have cultural heritage value, and if the owner was able to prove that, that may be another reason. Those are probably the only ones that I would say, but it's really up to the committee. Unfortunately, it's a lot of a case by case basis, unless the house burns down. I mean, that's a completely different scenario, right?
And there is the other one there. Sorry, just to finish, there is that other homeowner on Sussex that did not want to be listed and created a big, wrote a letter and so on. So there is that other one.
And they weren't added to the register. So council, so they did a deputation to council when the listing originally came forward in October, and council chose not to list the property at that time. So so they were never added on. Whereas this one, they were added on and then they objected afterwards. So it's slightly different.
So one of the reasons where consideration has been done in the past that I know of is, as Emily says, those two reasons. Maybe they can prove that Mccrae never lived there, and that wasn't legitimately his house. So then, yeah, I can see removing it for that cultural value. In the past, I've seen houses removed because we maybe have an area of town where there are 10 houses that are almost of an identical period and style. And so you are preserving that style on into the future architecturally. So, but I think it is basically a decision made house by house. I don't think it can be done any other way. So then I have Skip and now Ron.
Okay, actually, part of the question was already put forward, because my concern is, like, have we not already set a precedent with the churches and those ones that were part of the listing and then council voted not to put them on there? So what's the difference in this one? I get that it was listed, but maybe they didn't have the time to come to lodge a complaint.
All right, thank you. Ron?
Yeah, just further what Skip had said there, there was also a house on Front Street in Bob Cage, and I think that it was brought to council and I voted keep it historical, but I'm pretty sure it was taken off the list, as well as a church in Omemee, the Anglican church. Were they not those two properties? I'm pretty sure the one in Bob Cajun was taken off recently, or a couple of months ago, 3 months ago.
It was never put on in the first place.
Oh, it was never put on. Okay, okay. All right.
It's different when they don't get on to when they're on, and then you have to take them off.
So the one in Bob Cajun was never put on to begin with, was it, Dan? Oh, okay. All right. Sorry about that.
And what about the church, Emily? I don't remember that specifically.
Same scenario. We had proposed them for listing, and council chose not to list it because the church didn't want to be on. And that's council's prerogative to do that.
Yes. So my concern here is the precedent that's established by us removing something that we felt was of value to be on there in the first place. And the letter from the owner seems to misunderstand what's happened anyway, because she writes about the house being designated. It is not designated. And so my personal feeling is I don't want to slide down, as Anne says, the slippery slope. Anne?
I
And
would
Ian.
suspect what has happened is when their property was listed, they advised their insurance company that it was designated, and the insurance company said, we don't do designated homes, but it isn't designated. So I really do think it's probably a miscommunication. I would doubt very much that their insurance company would cancel them for just being a listed property.
I agree. And Ian?
I just want to return very briefly to what Emily said a moment ago about how there's no real criteria when it comes to listing properties, or I think the word she used was evaluation. Because when I read over the letter that the property owner in question sent, it was kind of difficult for me to interpret it. I was trying to figure out, is she trying to say to the committee kind of, oh, there, my property really doesn't have heritage value because it has lost all these different features. That's kind of how I read it. And I just wonder if in any other place in Ontario, is there a more formal evaluation process that municipal heritage committees use or can use when it comes to these sorts of questions? Because I kind of read that letter as the property owner telling the committee that her property had no heritage value. And I felt the reasons that were given were somewhat shallow. And I just wonder, in your experience, Athol or Emily or anyone else, are there more formalized evaluation techniques used elsewhere in the province for these sorts of questions?
Well, about 6 months or so ago, I think I gave a copy of the evaluation form we developed and used in Newmarket. I think I gave that to you, Emily.
Yeah, and what we're going to do, because we've had some questions about this, we also had questions with 45 Sussex. So the blurb itself is supposed to sort of give the idea of cultural heritage value, but we're going to do an evaluation matrix for all of the listed properties, just to have, we probably won't put them in the council report, but we'll have them in the back end when we do it. Just that kind of ticks off the criteria. We have to use Ontario Regulation 906, because that's the framework presented to us by the province, and it keeps the evaluation that we do between designated and listed properties consistent. So we want to keep that consistency within our evaluation, but we're just going to do a check mark matrix for everything. It's unnecessary from a legal perspective, but in terms of dealing with this kind of issue, it's really helpful.
Because I think what she's talking about, I interpreted it the same way as you, Ian, was being denigrating to her own home physically. But as I said, there's a cultural value to her home, which is the Mccrae Valley. That has nothing really to do with whether you've got shutters or a porch. Okay. Anne?
Going back to the insurance aspect of it and where this is going, would it be unheard of for us to go back to her and say to give us something from her insurance company that says that they won't insure it? Like, that would give us the opportunity to clear it up. I mean, we really wouldn't want to put this person in a position of not being able to have insurance on their home, but I don't think that's the case. So is there any way that we could go back and ask them to have something from their insurance company saying that they would cancel it?
We can't force them to provide that.
Okay.
Ian?
So this particular property was included on the 2021 Doors Open driving tour from Woodville up to Coviconk or Kirkfield. And I had occasion on that tour to chat with the property owner. And she mentioned at the time that the front porch, the west front porch, which she cites in her letter as being no longer there. She mentioned in person to me that she had contemplated rebuilding that, reconstructing it in the original style. So to your point, Athol, about kind of almost self-denigration of her property seems a bit strong, but it was almost the way the letter was worded. It was almost as though she was trying to convince us that it had no heritage value whatsoever. And that just didn't rest comfortably with me. So I just wanted to share that.
All right. Yes, Julia?
So then I would suggest that we send her a letter saying that for the heritage value, based on who owned the home before and based on the knowledge that we have about insurance, we would like her to reconsider and that sort of thing, to explain to her that we still feel that the heritage value is there. I think we should just address it directly rather than just say, okay, we're gonna let you get off the listed list. Sorry, I didn't explain that.
I got it.
You got it, right?
Yeah.
From a legal perspective, just so everybody's aware, the committee can certainly address some correspondence, that's fine. But the committee still has to make a recommendation to council. We've received an objection formally under the act, and so you've got to make a recommendation, yay or nay.
All right,
unfortunately.
sorry. So that should go to council, not to her then.
Yeah, I mean, if the committee wants to provide information to a property owner, they're certainly welcome to do that. But because of the processes under the act, we need a recommendation to go to council.
Okay.
Do we have a time limit on that recommendation under the new act?
I think we do. Yeah, and I think we're under the 60 days. So you got to do it now, basically.
So is anyone willing to frame a motion regarding keeping or removing this property from the listed properties? It is not designated. Julia?
So I would like to propose that we keep it on the listed list.
All right, Anne?
Maybe if we could expand on what Julia said and put it forward as a motion that we want to keep it on the list because it does have the values that we just spoke about. And also that there appears to be some confusion between listed and designated, and maybe even include to council the package that Emily has that shows that, listed properties, it should not affect their value or insurability.
We just received a message from Laura Love saying she has to leave, and obviously she didn't wish to just leave without letting us know that she had another commitment. So thank you very much, Laura. It just popped up on my screen. So I'd be in favor of phrasing it somewhat similar to what Anne is saying, that we say for the reasons that the committee put it on the list, we stand by those reasons, and that the misunderstanding of the homeowner seems to be that the house was designated where it was not, it was simply listed.
Can I just make a suggestion for a clean motion here?
We gotta be clean now.
Yeah, we gotta be clean, sorry. Just so you're not giving something really long to council. What might make sense in this particular case is that the motion is that the property remain listed, and that the chair provide correspondence to council outlining the rationale for that.
Okay.
So council will get the motion and also correspondence from the committee saying this is what we discussed. And that covers it off in like an easy motion for me to put in the minutes.
Sure, and create
If
some
that
work
works
for the
if that works for
chair.
everybody.
And create from correspondence work, which I think is valid. So I'm willing to ask for someone to make the motion as phrased by Emily. Please, someone move it. It's moved by Anne, and I'm going to say seconded by Julia.
When
All
you
those
do
in-
that correspondence, Athol, would it make sense to include what Ian said about it being on the doors open?
Sure,
I mean,
it was
by having it
considered,
on doors open, she's acknowledging that her home has heritage value.
yes.
Anyway, sorry.
Just to clarify, Anne, it wasn't on doors open in the sense that you could go in and tour around. It was on the driving tour.
Okay.
So it was just a case of people could drive by, and my father and I, we drove in and just had a look around, but it wasn't like she was hosting tours through it. Just a point of clarification.
No, but still from an outside standpoint,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, I getcha. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, carried. I acknowledge your opposition, Bill. All right, moving on.
Jim had a
Next
question.
item.
Jim had
Pardon
a
me?
question. I think Jim had a question. Jim,
Oh,
Barrett?
sorry, I didn't see your hand, Jim. You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry, Athol. I completely support the motion for all, all the dialogue, and it would seem very unfortunate if there were to be any kind of bad feelings out of this. Where we left off, or where you left off with this property owner, Emily, was there still an open door in terms of potential further dialogue, or did they not want to speak with you anymore about this? Just the motion is the motion, and the committee is speaking, that's for sure. But is there a way that we can better understand? Oh, I lost her. I scared her away.
Sorry, I just had to let the dog out.
Oh.
So that's how it goes. So in terms of my discussion with the owner, I think she was pretty firm that she wanted it off the register. It
Okay.
wasn't really a discussion. It was more of a direct objection and request that it be removed.
Okay. Well, even by nature of the fact that I'm suggesting this right now, it's unfortunate, but I do believe that there are the values there. And if there were any kind of misunderstanding at all, that would be most unfortunate. And as far as I'm concerned, perhaps even a dangerous precedent. If we look at the whole reason behind listing, the spirit and intent of it, and what we do as a heritage committee and the heritage, the culture in general around heritage. I'm quite happy with the motion, and that's fine. I just thought that there might be an opportunity for other dialogue if they truly didn't understand. What Anne had to say really made a difference with me, and I've had my challenges with the insurance industry as well, and it just conjured up some memories that I had sort of, tucked away for the past. So I do understand. No, I'm fine with this. I think this is the best possible option at this point, that if we couldn't have any supplemental dialogue. So fair enough. Thank you.
You. All right, moving on to the next item, which is the Heritage Planning Update. We have provided for you the copy of the letter that was sent to the planner, Mr. Walker, relating to the railway station in Coboconk, and it's there for your information. Okay.
We just need a motion to accept the report as information.
All right. Julia, you so move. Seconded by Jim. All those in favor? Thank you. Carried. We now move on to something that's a wonderful thing, which is a designation request.
But
So,
Ethel, we missed the heritage planning update.
did we?
Yep, we did the correspondence and we missed 4.5. There's a lot of reports on this one.
Okay, you got to come back at me, Emily. Which one did we miss?
It
4.5.
is item 4.5, which is report. Oh my gosh, sorry, this is a big agenda. Just a minute. So we just did item 4.4, which is the Heritage Committee correspondence.
Yeah.
And so our next item is 4.5, which is Heritage
Okay.
Planning Update, which is
So
report.
that's your bailiwick.
That's right. So yeah, this is all me. So this is just our monthly heritage planning update for the committee. So this is our update for November and December 2021, because we didn't do one of these in December. So just a few things, what we did in the past couple months. So December 14th, we had the designation bylaw for the Old Bethany Post Office and the replacement designation bylaw for the Case Manager Ice Snow Wall, just to clean it up after the issues there. We also did an administrative amendment to the heritage fees bylaw, but there was an error in one of the recitals. So that was just, we did an administrative update on that. January 11th, Committee of the Whole, so 2 days ago. So Committee of the Whole received the amendments to the Heritage Delegated Authority bylaw that we discussed in December. So just allowing some of the timeframes within the Act to be extended at mutual agreement with the applicant. And that was passed by Committee of the Whole. So that will go to Council in 2 weeks' time. For listing properties, this is just kind of an FYI on this. So staff are in the process, and by staff, I mean me, are in the process of researching properties for listing in 2022. So if the committee has suggestions of things they want on the list for 2022, please let me know. There's some outstanding ones that people suggested last year, so we'll get those on. But because this is a municipal election year, which I'll talk about in a minute, we're only going to do one massive list to council. We're not going to do one in the fall, just because there will be an election at that time. So we're going to do a big one this spring. So anything that you want on, let me know. And information you have, please forward that to me as well. The next item is with Doors Open. So we've indicated to the Heritage Trust that the city is participating in Doors Open 2022. So for those of you who are interested in helping out with that, we're doing it. So that'll be the plan for this year. There's no fees this year for participation, which is great. So that saves us a little bit of money on the budget front. The other thing that wasn't in here because Laura wasn't on board yet, Laura will be helping us out as a staff support person for Doors Open. So for those of you who are on the Doors Open subcommittee, you'll be working with her as opposed to with me. I will be helping out with her this year to transition over, but the event is going to be going over to her position. The next thing is municipal elections. So this is something that I wanted to chat to the committee about, just so everybody understands what's going to happen in 2022, because it's a municipal election year. So our voting period is in October, and the new council will meet for the first time in November. So we'll see what the composition of our new council is, depending on who's running, who's reelected, any new councillors that we may have. So we don't know who it's going to be, and we'll find out in November. But for this committee, there's a few things that it's important to know. So the first one is that everybody's term expires at the end of the term of council. So over the past few years, I've been slowly working it so that everybody ends at the same time, which is not something that happened in the past, but that's how it is now. However, you're going to remain in your posts until the new committee is appointed. So that'll be in early 2023. So this committee will just continue on until we have a new committee, probably February or March. So it'll be a little while. I'll get you more information on the reapplication process for the next term of council in the second half of the year. It'll be very similar to the application process in the past, but it'll be the whole committee this time, instead of just a few people here and there. And once that application is out for reappointment, I'll send that around to everybody. So people who want to continue onto the committee can reapply, and we'll go through the process to get ourselves a new committee for the next term of council. A couple other things to remember in our council committees of council boards task force ethics policy, which I'm sure everyone didn't read when they started on the committee, because it's really long. There is a section regarding work of a political nature, specifically with regard to municipal elections. So just so everybody is aware, as a committee member, you're prohibited from using city resources to support a re-election campaign. So that's just an FYI for everybody. And also to make sure that if you are working on the municipal election, to make sure that you're not using your position on the committee as a way to, do political things. So you're certainly welcome to work on campaigns or run yourself as a private citizen, but just be aware of your position on the committee if you choose to do that. So it should be an interesting year in terms of our work, the stuff that we need to get done. Once the summer and the fall rolls around, the council and committee of the whole schedule gets a little bit messy, just to accommodate the election. So we are going to try any business that we want to get through. We're going to try and get it through by the summer, just so that we know we're going to be hitting regular committee of the whole and council meetings. So if there are specific things we need to go to council, we're going to try and get them done sooner rather than later, just because things are a little bit more erratic in the second half of the year. Obviously, if we have things that have statutory timelines, they'll go when they have to go. But those larger projects that we can kind of time out, we're going to try and do in Q1 and Q2. So just be aware of that. Once we get into our agendas, they're probably going to be pretty big. And that's probably how a lot of committees are going to operate. Just because it's hard to get on the agenda when there's only erratic meetings later in the year. So that's the elections update. If anybody has questions about that, let me know. But there'll be more information on it when we get closer to the time.
Julia?
Just one quick question. So does that mean that we will see all of our positions posted to the public? It opens up to the public and people can apply, anyone can apply? Okay, perfect.
That's right. So when the fall rolls around, so usually positions are posted in November. I'm not sure, it probably won't be November just because they'll be getting the new council ready. It'll probably be a little bit later for this cycle, just because of the election. The 11 positions for this committee will be posted. So Councillor Ashmore's position is appointed from council, so that position isn't posted, but all the other ones will be. And everybody on the committee who wants to reapply for them is absolutely welcome to do so.
Any other questions? Now we let Daisy in.
Yeah, pretty much. The dog's back in now. There we go.
Do you require a motion for your report? Just to
Yeah,
receive it as information? So may I have someone move to receive this report as information? Ian, seconded by Skip. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. All right. Now we can move on to the designation request for 25 Melbourne Street East in Lindsay. Would you like to review this for us, Emily?
For sure. Yeah. So this is 25 Melbourne Street East. It's a property within our Heritage Conservation District study area. And I received a phone call from a concerned property owner, one of the adjacent properties, with regard to this property. So it's constructed in 1862, and it's recently been sold. And the sellers told the caller that the adjacent property owner that the new owners intended to demolish the house to build 2 new houses or a multi-residential property on the lot. It's a large lot. It's big enough to accommodate it for sure. So the person I spoke to had spoken to several neighbors and residents in the area who were very concerned about this regarding the potential redevelopment of the property just in general, and also the demolition of the house because it is a historic property and it is within the Conservation District study area. So the owner, sorry, not the owner, the caller who I spoke to, she sent an email which is appended to the report to me after we spoke on the phone. And also noted that a petition and formal request to designate the property is being prepared. So she was going to go around, speak to other owners in the area and put a petition together to designate this property. So just for some background on this, it's in the study area, which means that at the moment there's no formal protection for it, but we are studying to be in an HCD. It's in a bit of an awkward situation in terms of where it is. And because the study has been delayed by the COVID-19 pandemic, we probably would have had the plan at least almost ready by now if we had been able to do the public engagement that we normally would do when there isn't sickness going around. So it's a bit unfortunate. So we'll probably have the HCD study to council in the spring. But the plan won't be in effect until at least mid-2023. That's the realistic time frame of it. So that's when protection under Part 5 of the Act would be conferred on this property if it was included in the HCD boundaries. So the house itself is quite old. It's on the 1875 bird's eye view map of the town. I don't have a lot of information about the building. It does have some heritage value for sure. In terms of redevelopment of the property, we haven't received a Planning Act application for it. So this is what came from the caller is really just hearsay within the community. So everyone should be aware of that. It is in an R2 zone, which allows for single detached dwellings. So in order to redevelop this property, either for townhouses or some other kind of multi-residential unit, there would have to be some kind of Planning Act application, which we don't have. We also don't have a demolition permit application for it. So it's just talk so far in the community. So there's a couple of options to deal with this that the committee can discuss. I think the first step might be to prepare a heritage evaluation report for this property specifically to see if it might warrant individual designation. So that's one option. If the committee would like to protect this property prior to an HCD plan being adopted for the Old Mill area. There is another option that I didn't write in the report because I wasn't thinking about it actually when I wrote it. I thought of it after I published the agenda. We also have the option to put in place an interim control bylaw for this area. So instead of designating this property individually, we could request that council pass a bylaw to prohibit demolition within the study area until the HCD plan is prepared. This is something that we could have done when we started the study. We chose not to at the time because you can only have interim control bylaws in place for a year. So if we had done it, it would have expired by now. However, we can put it in now if that's something that the committee would like to pursue. So there's a couple of different options in terms of controlling demolition on this particular property. So everyone's aware both of these things could be appealed. Doing an interim control bylaw is pretty risky in terms of appeals because it can be appealed by anybody within the study area. However, it prevents a wider problem of having properties demolished in the study area while the study is being completed. An individual designation can also be appealed by anyone, probably by the property owner, but it would only protect the subject property that we're talking about. So those are sort of the options with this property. I think it's important for everybody to just remember we don't have an application for it yet, but we might get one in, next week. We really have no idea, but the neighbors have requested that it be individually designated. So the committee can chew on that and decide what you want to do and provide some direction to myself to pursue one of these options.
All right, are there any comments or questions arising from Emily's discussion of the situation? Bill Bateman? You're on mute. Oh, there you are.
There I am. Well, I think it gets back to the point that I made earlier, that historically we've never had request of the property owner. And it sounds to me as though we are going ahead and trying to put, a number of possible scenarios in place based upon a phone call from a neighbor, which I don't think is, personally, I don't think that's an appropriate way for this committee to operate. I think that, if the committee decides that the property is worthy of putting on the list, fair enough, there's a procedure that has to be followed in that case. If the committee decides that without a request from the property owner, we want to move forward with the designation process, fair enough, there's another process there. But it seems to me that suggesting that we go to council and pass some sort of an omnibus bylaw, or ask council to pass some sort of an omnibus bylaw to prohibit demolition within an area really isn't appropriate under the circumstances. We don't really have any information as to what the plans are with respect to this property, except a phone call from a neighbor. And I just don't think that it's appropriate for this committee to react to that sort of information.
I have Ian and then Anne.
I concur with Bill Bateman on this one. I think we need to await further information. I can't visualize the property in question at the moment, but I think Emily has included it in the report. I just may not have read that portion.
Hold on a second. I'll find a photo of it, continue discussing, and then I'll share my screen when I find it.
Okay. I think
Thank
if we, I think if we had in writing or some kind of visual or some kind of detailed confirmation that they were planning to do something drastic with this particular property, then we would act. But I think until we have more information, we should maybe just observe and keep an open ear, as it were.
Thank you, Ian. Anne?
I was going to say I concur with that. I've had a look at it on Google Maps. It is a nice big lot and a really small little house, so you can see what they could do that with it. But I would maybe just have a tendency to say we should have a look at the heritage to see if it could be listed, and then just sit tight and wait to see what comes of it. If it looks like, the person that you spoke with on the phone does come forward with the petition, it certainly would make sense to list it to protect it from demolition while you have the opportunity to do more research. But I at this point wouldn't put a ton of time into it other than just looking to see if it is something that eventually does have heritage aspects to it.
So the recommendation for this report is for staff to prepare a heritage evaluation report for the property. So that's a very non-committal recommendation. And that could be prepare the report and send it forward to council in March, or prepare the report and sit on it. So that's the recommendation that I've made from my perspective. And I mean, the committee can agree with that or not. That's something that we could consider. And then the report is sitting on my computer ready to go if it's required, if we get a planning application, if we get a demolition permit application, which we don't have.
I would say, based on the discussion that we've had, I mean, certainly don't want to stop anybody else from speaking up, but I would put forward a recommendation that you do just that I agree with you. Because if you're only going to put in one bunch of listed properties early in the year, then you'd want to be ready to add this to it if you needed to.
All right, is everyone finished looking at the shared screen? Because now I can't see half of you. So there we go. Now I can see you. Is there anyone else who has any question or comment? Ron?
Yeah, just through you to Emily. You mentioned it's in the Old Mill District historical area. So does that mean that every property, every house, every property in that district is basically listed, or are they on an individual basis listed? Because
So
it's
at the moment, it's nothing. So it's in the study area. So it's just the area that we're looking at to potentially designate later. So the study is ongoing, but while the study goes on, none of the properties have any heritage protection.
But I thought it went down to Durham Street, the corner of Durham and Lindsay Street. There was a section, like a quarter section of Lindsay coming from the river on the north, the river on the east, and then Durham Street on the south and Lindsay Street on the west. That quadrant was deemed historical, and that we couldn't do anything in there, or you had to apply first before you could do any building or renovations.
That's the geographic area that we're doing the study in. So at the moment, we're doing the study to see whether or not the area is historic enough to be protected, if you know what I mean. So we're doing the background research for that right now. So while we do that background study, the area itself is not protected. It's just a study.
Yeah, I thought the old mill itself was protected, though, is it not? Like just the mill itself?
Nope. It's not at all. It probably should be.
Not even the mill.
No. In that area, there are 6 properties that have protection. St. Mary's Church is one of them.
Right.
The 34 Lindsay Street South is listed. The Italianate commercial building just down from Rideout Street. And then 4 houses are individually designated, and that's it. Everything else is just currently being studied to see whether or not it merits conservation district designation. So it's a bit of an awkward interim period between identifying the area as, oh yes, this might have some historic value, and actually designating it. So at the moment, people in there can do whatever they want, which
I'm quite surprised the mill wasn't designated. Well, okay, thanks for letting me know. Us know.
So, unless there's any further discussion, I'm prepared to accept and moving the recommendation that Emily has put before us, that the survey be done to find out the historic and cultural value of this address, and then to bring that back to the committee, and the committee can then decide whether to sit on it or enact it. Was that clean enough, Emily? All right, so can I accept you, Anne, as moving that? Yes, any seconder? Ian? Oh. All those in favor? Thank you, it's carried. Are you okay, Emily?
just finding my place in the agenda.
It's difficult, it's a biggie. So we are now at the point of the subcommittee reports or updates. And we have 5.1, the Heritage Conservation District Subcommittee, and we do have minutes from that subcommittee that were distributed to you. And if we can have someone move those for information, that would be fine. All right, Jim moves. Can I have a seconder? Skip, all those in favor? That's carried, thank you. The outreach subcommittee. I don't know if there's anything new to report, except Emily announced that we are doing it, doors open, and that Laura is going to be part of that in the ongoing. Ian?
I guess this is just a request to Emily. At some point, perhaps this winter, Emily, could you and Laura arrange like a meeting with like myself and Bill Peel, I guess, if he's still interested in doors open, so we can kind of get to know each other a little bit better and lay some foundations for doors open this year?
Yeah, we'll do that the next couple of weeks. And just so the outreach subcommittee, it includes both Doors Open and the Osprey Heritage Awards. So I think a little bit later on in the year, we should probably figure out who wants to do the Osprey Heritage Awards. We don't have to do it tonight. But yeah, with Doors Open, I think we'll get something going in the next couple of weeks, and just start chatting about it with Laura and you and Bill. And when Bill gets back from Florida. So we can all chat through that for sure and figure out next steps. And if anybody else wants to be involved in Doors Open, let me know, because we always need an extra body.
All right, the Osprey Awards, there was a subcommittee put together, but it's never functioned because of the pandemic. So I think it's appropriate that we wait to hear whether that's in effect this year or not. Maybe we should come back to this somewhere around May and see how things are going. So I'd like to table the Osprey Awards until May. Julia?
I did agree that we shouldn't have them last year. However, this year I have someone I'd like to nominate who's done a tremendous job. So shall I wait till May?
I think so, Julia. Just in case the pandemic is still raging around us, I think it would be a good idea to wait. I'm glad that you found someone you wish to nominate. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Can we receive those reports for information from the outreach subcommittee? May I have a mover? Anne? Seconder, Jim? All those in favor? Thank you. It's carried. The sign subcommittee, would you like to give us a brief report on the meeting that we had last month, Jim?
Yeah, actually, I think I did speak to that the last time around. We clearly haven't been able. What's that? Sorry?
I think you did too.
Yeah, I did too. So I wasn't really prepared to repeat that. So, but anyway, certainly we need to move forward with this. And I had some questions as far as COVID and now the availability or whether it's permissible to meet in my building or how we are going to structure the next meeting. Emily, what kind of restrictions are on us right now?
Whatever the restrictions, general gathering restrictions are for the province, and they change all the time, and I'm not sure what they are. From a city perspective, we are not doing any meetings in person. So that is, I would recommend using Zoom. If you require me to set up a Zoom meeting, I'm very happy to do that for members of the subcommittee.
Okay, I will reach out to the members, and I'll probably approach you individually just for a quick dialogue, just to see if there's been any thoughts in the meantime, unless you'd prefer to discuss it right now. But we did make some progress there. I'd like to revisit that and I'd take it to the very next step. I have a question for you, Emily. Are there any drop dead dates as far as trying to have our work done to be able to contribute to the city's efforts to bring about the signage bylaw? Do you have any kind of timelines at all that you're aware of?
There's no timeline yet. So the subcommittee can just work away and have its ducks in a row for when our building division gets to doing that revision seriously. It's not happening right now. It's not like they're going to council this year. They'll get it done at some point, but it would be good for this committee to know what it wants when that,
I agree. I
when that
agree.
happens.
Yeah, and it was a big positive step where we identified the different categories of signage, those that complied, good examples of, what the signage would be, those that kind of in the middle, no, those that did not, and that need to be addressed, identified, that actually have maybe put up signs that weren't as appropriate or didn't get permits. I still occasionally get a report of another sign has just recently gone up in a building. I don't know whether there was a permit for it or not. I just found out about it actually, and I can send you a photo of it just to see. And I don't know, it seems reasonable though. On the upside, it's a business that's relocating to the actual downtown area. There's significant business, and I think that they'll blend in quite nicely, and the downtown certainly needs businesses to replace the businesses we've left. So I think it's good for the heritage district. So, but I will forward that information to you. Does anybody have any other information or knowledge of any other signs that have gone up that I may not be aware of?
Well, I'm just going to ask Emily for a report on the signage on the new restaurant that's in the Grand, where you and I went out to look at a couple of issues there. Emily, in December, I think it was.
I'm still dealing with that. It hasn't been resolved yet, but we're getting there.
Yeah.
We'll get there. So just so people are aware, the signage for the One-Eyed Jacks was approved to be externally lit, and when it was put up internally lit, which they're obviously not allowed to do. So I'm working to get that taken down.
And there's also the issue of windows.
Yeah, and I'm dealing with that as well. It takes ages, but yeah, it's coming. There's lots of issues. We'll get there. Yeah.
And actually, as far as potential, I suspect that there will be some changing in the signage, and on one front, it could be a very positive thing. I understand the Academy Theater has been purchased by the developer with Flato, no? Developments?
They haven't been purchased. I think Flato gave them, donated a substantial amount of money, which is to be used over a 15-year period, I think.
Yeah, so it wasn't a statement. It was more just somebody said to me that he had bought it. A consortium of people had bought the building. I haven't been able to confirm or deny, but I flipped over a copy of the Lindsay Advocate, and there was an advertisement there showing his involvement. It almost implied that that there would be a name or something involved. I have no idea, so that could be conjecture as well, but I'm not quite sure. So
I believe that it's got the potential to be renamed, but that he did not purchase it. He invested in it.
Okay, well, fair enough. I didn't know whether that would trigger a change in signage or renaming or whatnot. But again, this was just recent information that I stumbled upon or somebody brought to my attention just earlier in the week. And so I really don't know where we're at there, but that was one of the rumors. So very good. Am I able to ask? Yeah, Bill has a question.
It's not a question. In terms of full disclosure, I'm on the board of the Academy Theater.
Yeah.
And I can clarify that Flato Developments has provided a significant commitment to provide funding over the next 15 years in exchange for naming rights in certain aspects of the theater. So the theater will be operating as the Flato Academy Theater Lindsay. The ownership of the theater remains the same. It's simply a sale of the naming rights to certain aspects of the theater to the development company.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that update and thank you for, the correct information. There's always lots of information flying around and one never knows, but I think that's a very positive development though for, for the academy. Yeah, it's an important, it's an important facility and a wonderful heritage building. And if this will sustain them, I know they've struggled for years. And it's certainly worth saving, and I think it's a very positive. So anyway, there you go. That's all I've got for now, unless anybody has any specific questions regarding signage.
I just want to call attention to Miss Daisy, who's joined the committee at 6:44 p.m.
Miss Daisy, you're late. Do you have any specific questions?
So
Yeah, she's
should I
always keen
have
to say hi.
someone move that we accept the report from Jim for information? Do I have a mover? All right, Councillor Ashmore. Do I have a seconder? Bill, thank you. All those in favor? Carried, thank you. The Piccolo Point Cabin Subcommittee, so we pop back to you, Ron.
Okay, thanks. So I have some very up-to-date information. I sent an email to Karen Feely. She's the strategic advisor, Ontario Waterways, Parks Canada. And I was going to let the members know, Anne and Athol and Bill, but I thought I'd just read this email to the committee because this came in today at 4:56 p.m. Said, hi Ron, the project is currently on hold, meaning the demolition that we talked about. Pending further information on the heritage value of the structures. We welcome any further information for Heritage Committee, the Heritage Committee has to offer. So that's good news. They don't have any demolition plans right now. They're waiting. They're waiting for more information. I've had some people ask me about whether they could be purchased, but I never really said anything until I talked to the committee. But the good news is that no demolition permits have been issued or nothing like that's happening right now. So, but not to say that we just sit on our laurels, but at least it's good news that they're not tearing them down right now.
Ron, do you know if the ice forms firm enough that we can walk to these places now?
Might be able to pretty soon. I think the best way is to go to Blue Water Avenue in Snug Harbor and walk from their little pier at the end there. I'll go down there and have a look. It's going to be pretty good ice thickness, I think, by now. But I'll check that out. I think that's probably your best route from there.
Because one of the things I was thinking of is if we could go and take some photos of the properties, we could then hand them to Miss Emily to see if there's any heritage value, and then we could provide that report to the Trent Severn.
Sounds good, yeah.
I think that's the logical next steps.
Okay.
Okay. So could we accept this report from Ron for information? Moved by Jim, seconded by Bill. All those in favor? Thank you. All right, moving on to the Designated Properties Subcommittee. Do you have anything there at this point, Emily?
No, so we had discussed late last year regarding having getting the iPads, the same ones that we're going to use for the heritage inventory to do this. So that hasn't happened yet. I've set up a form that people can use on ArcGIS, but we don't have the technology to do it yet. We can set it up on people's individual devices if you'd like to get going on that. And I also still need to provide a list of the city-owned properties. Sorry, I haven't done that yet. But it might make sense for that subcommittee to meet in the next little while to talk about to talk about kind of work planning. And also I can go through how the ArcGIS stuff works with everybody, if that makes sense.
It does, and I'm wondering who's the chair of that subcommittee. I don't think we've ever met, so I don't think there is a chair yet to call the meeting. So maybe Emily, you and I can get together and find a time.
Sure, I can set that up for everybody. We'll have a Zoom meeting and get going on that, if that works for everybody who's on the subcommittee. And I'll look and see who is on the subcommittee.
One of the things I remember is we were going to get some ID for those people so that we could avoid the interactions that Jim had on when going on his property survey. So I'd like to bring that forward as well.
Yeah, and I have some lanyards for everybody with name badges on them, so I can get that to everyone as well.
Okay. Can we accept this report for information? Julia, so moves. Skip seconds. All those in favor? Thank you very much. So we move on to the correspondence section, and for some reason, the Victoria County Historical Society chose to interface with this committee through myself. I'm not sure why, but they did. And so I asked Emily to provide all of you with a copy of this missive that they sent us, or me, to the committee. So I think we should, personally, I feel that we should table this until our discussion of that plan that Jorg shared with us today, because this relates to being a reaction to that plan that Jorg shared with us just today. So that's what I think we should do, is table this and discuss them both at the same time. What do you think, Emily?
I think that's a really good idea. We can table it until the next meeting to discuss in correspondence with the discussion of the concept drawing.
So if everybody's comfortable with that, I'd like someone to move that we table it until our discussion of the concept drawing. Anne moves. Do I have a seconder? Bill seconds. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Is there any other new business? Jim?
Not so much new business. Do we have any kind of an update on the development at Wellington Street at all? Is there any kind of information? Have we lost David? Is David gone now, or is he still here?
No, he's right here.
Still here.
Oh, there he is. Sorry, David. Not to be overlooked. My apologies.
That's right. Now, when you say Wellington Street, which
Wellington and William, there was I think 11-story tower at some point that.
Yes. So they're in talks with us still. So where the consultants left it with us is planning staff with Emily are regrouping internally, and then we're going to have a further discussion with the applicant, potentially with the owner as well, to provide them with our feedback on their submission to date, and then we'll see where we go from there.
Is there a timeline that the city has in mind, or they have in mind, or anything set?
There's nothing that's been set yet. The meeting is likely going to occur sometime within the next 1 to 2 months.
Okay, good to know. And I don't know whether it's related or not related to. I've heard that the property at 81 William Street has sold. It's the carpet place. In my understanding, it was the original blacksmith shop for the basin as the tall ships would come into the harbor. Ian, do you know anything about this building?
Is that the building opposite the Chrysler dealership?
that is right across the street as well. But again, it could be a rumor. I don't know details on it, but
I'm not familiar with what you've just said, but I do know that the building attached to it, immediately to the north, was the John Mccrae Foundry for quite a long time. There's, I think, a tanning salon or some other kind of business not related to the carpet company or the floor covering company in there right now. But that is one of the sort of buildings with industrial heritage at that intersection in that neighborhood, which I think I pointed out on our little walking jaunt a year ago.
yeah. Well, you know, the good news about these things is there are rumors, and rumors are just that, they're rumors, but it does show interest by people in what's going on heritage wise. And I appreciate when they reach out to me and they say, well, are you aware of this, or do you know this? It's an interesting building, and yeah, these are the kind of things. So that's just basically it. I didn't know if there was any kind of link to anything, any plans. Are there any plans coming forward for that at all, David, that you know of?
So at this point in time, there's no development application that's been filed for that parcel.
Okay. That's a good answer.
So David, after you, your planning staff and Emily get together and discuss the feedback to go back to the applicant, will it be coming back to this committee when there is an application made?
So we're talking about the 11-story building right now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so that's something where it's going to depend on, I think, where they land with their amendments, because they know that they have to do some substantial revisions to their existing supporting documentation. So the purpose of this meeting is really to further examine the degree of amendment that's required and to solidify our stance on what we're looking for. So it's going to be really dependent on them for what they come back to us with and whether or not there's a recirculation required. If there's going to be a substantial change to their proposal as a result of that feedback that we give, then I do see the need to recirculate the proposal because of a substantial change, at which point I will circulate to Emily, and then we'll go from there in terms of how comments would be received back to planning based on those revisions.
Okay, thank you.
That's good. Thank you.
All right. Any further business? So our next item on the agenda is next meeting.
So for our next meeting, as per our schedule, we are looking at February 3rd from, oh, hi, Daisy. Hi, yeah, okay. February 3rd from 5 to 7. We're going to be back on Zoom. I'm sure that we won't be through the restrictions in this stage of the pandemic yet, unfortunately. So that is our next date.
February 3rd at 5 p.m.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. That being the final item on our agenda, I will accept a motion for adjournment. Jim has both hands in the air, so I guess he's making that motion. Do we require a seconder, Emily? Do I have a seconder? I certainly had a quick hand come up from Skip, so that's it. Thank you very much, folks, for being here. Appreciate all your input. Thank you for being here, David, and waiting through this whole meeting to get to speak in the final few minutes. And hopefully we'll all be happy, healthy, and available on February the 3rd. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night.